Hello and welcome to this Sporting Planet, your global view of sports. I'm in London and I'm Natalie Sawyer.
From the USA, I'm Todd Harris.
And in Singapore, I'm Edward Russell.
Well, it's been a busy few weeks as 2024 turned into 2025 with a whole host of stories for us to get our teeth stuck into, from the Premier League to the NFL and even some darts action. Plus, later on in the episode, we'll be looking ahead to everything still to come in January, including the Australian Open.
Now, I don't know about you two, but the festive period gave me the chance to get to London and see my beloved Arsenal play. I went down to the Emirates to watch them beat Ipswich 1-0. To be honest, it wasn't the most exciting game that I've ever watched. A solo Kai Havertz goal, really the only thing to celebrate. But hey, a win's a win. And to be honest, Arsenal haven't had too many of those in recent days, so I'll take it. But I got to say, just being in London during that festive period, there was so much going on from a sporting perspective, so many sporting presents under the Christmas tree, not just football, but darts, as you mentioned. Todd will be tucking into that festive feast over the course of the show. But how about you, Natalie? First of all, what did you get up to during the Christmas New Year period, and what really stood out for you?
Well, like you, I went to some football. I was at the Chelsea-Fulham game on Boxing Day, where Fulham won at Stamford Bridge for the first time in, 45 years, coming from behind to do so, scoring 2 late goals. So that was interesting, just to see where both those West London teams are at. Bear in mind, they're a huge rival of my Brentford. And talking of Brentford, I was also at Brentford against Arsenal on New Year's Day, which went the way of your beloved Arsenal, Ed, as they won 3-1 coming from behind likewise in that one to win that one. A game that I thought in the first half was pretty even, 1-1 going in at half time. I thought, you were there for the taking, and yet we fell apart and you just took over and won that game quite convincingly in the end. So, yeah, a bit of disappointment in terms of the football for me and a Brentford fan, but still, nonetheless, we're all happy. It's all fine. But of course, that means that there's lots that's happened in the world of football, because over here, of course, when it comes to the football calendar, many European leagues have a festive break, but not so in the Premier League, the EFL, etc., because it's one of our highlights of the football calendar. In fact, Boxing Day fixtures often are the ones that you look out for when those fixtures come out. And if we look at the tail of the tape right now, when it comes to the Premier League, Liverpool still leading the way. 15 league games they are now unbeaten since their only defeat in the league, which was to Nottingham Forest. They're 6 points clear with a game in hand over your Arsenal, who... they'll be hoping for slip-ups from Arne Slot's side, but they're not slipping up right now, are they? But of course, the team to watch is Nottingham Forest. They are very much the surprise story in this season. They're on a 6-game winning streak, their best return since their promotion back to the Premier League, beating Manchester United, Aston Villa, Tottenham in that run as well. And I think what was the last time they won the First Division was in 1978. And what I'm wondering from both of you is, are they in this title race? Because for me, they're being discounted by a lot. But they're level on points with Arsenal. They're on this juggernaut train, it feels, Todd, yet people aren't talking about them as title runners.
No, I think you're exactly right. And I think Nottingham Forest is one of those teams that has such good chemistry right now. The way they're playing, I don't want to say they're peaking too soon, but their play in the last 6 fixtures has been just stellar. And so I think that's one of those teams that we always say stock up, stock down. Definitely stock up for them right now. I do want to go back to Chelsea.
I just want to point out my dog who's here. He's joining in the conversation.
Yeah, I wasn't sure whether to bring that up or not, but thank you for addressing the elephant or the dog in the room.
Yeah, there he is. That's my Dash. Sorry, carry on, Todd.
No, I'm glad that Dash made a cameo on this Sporting Planet, but I think you're right. Nottingham Forest has been the hot team. They've looked very good. I think another team that I like, and because I like Chelsea, the Blues, I think people aren't talking about Chelsea, and that might be a good thing, because in the past, when they have been talking about Chelsea, it's because how Chelsea has just absolutely messed things up, and they've spent a ton of money, and they aren't getting any return on that money, and they're looking for a new manager, or they're trading the whole offensive front. So Chelsea, I think, is in a very good place right now, and there's talk they may be doing some nice moves during the transfer window.
Actually, similarities between Chelsea and Forest. Of course, when they got those owners in, they bought everyone and then realized that wasn't the way to go, streamlined the squad, and now they've got that team harmony back again.
It's fascinating what's going to pan out, of course, in the Premier League. And there's likewise the relegation fight looks like, the could be Southampton may look as though they're down and out already, because they are 10 points from safety as things stand as we're recording this. But Leicester and Ipswich, they're not too far away from safety. And I'm sure there's a renewed belief in Ipswich as well, because they're only in the bottom three due to a worse goal difference than Wolves above them. So that's something to look out for as we head into 2025. But another sport we have to talk about, it's already been touched on, Ali Pali, double top, 9 data, check out their terms and names, of course, that if you're a darts fan, you will well be across what will have happened at Alexandra Palace. Because for 2 weeks in the UK, it's all eyes on that amazing venue at the end of December into the beginning of January for the World Darts Championship. 96 players, 96 of the best in the world come together to win that biggest prize in sport. And it was a 17-year-old, Luke Littler, that came away as the world champion. Let's not forget, he reached the final in his debut season last year, lost out to another Luke Humphreys, who many expected was going to win this tournament once again, but he bowed out earlier on in the tournament. And Luke Littler just seems unstoppable. And I don't know what you guys were doing at 17, but I certainly wasn't competing on a world stage. Simply incredible what he's been able to do in such a short space of time.
Natalie, did you think when Luke Littler burst on the scenes last year, I think everyone was talking about him being so young, all that stuff, it's a one-hit wonder. He might not be able to handle pressure. This kid has got ice in the veins. I am so impressed by his ability to step up there. And then maybe it's because he's so young, he doesn't realize how big it is. But when you feel Ali Pali in that whole hall and people have been drinking all day and they're just going nuts, nothing faces him. He just steps up there just calmly, yep, this is what I do for a living. Impressive.
Absolutely. I mean, he won 10 titles in the lead up to the World Championship. So clearly not a one-hit wonder, like you're saying, but many might have thought that. I mean, it's just simply a wonderful story. And the best thing about it as well, I think there were a lot of newcomers to darts just based on his story from last year who would have loved that journey that he went on to get to the final, a 16-year-old as he was then, to now, just a year later, you've become the world champion. I think Phil Taylor, who's won 16 world titles. He leads the way when it comes to his world title. His first world title came at the age of 29. So you kind of have to think, what can Luke Littler do in the world of darts?
And also just that the celebrity didn't go to his head. I mean, in the lead up to that, he was everywhere. I was watching him on Celebrity Bullseye with Freddie Flintoff. And obviously he is this massive icon now, and he would be forgiven at that age, suddenly having all this wealth and celebrity, to take the sport a little bit less seriously. But it's been the opposite of that. And as you mentioned, bringing a huge new audience to darts as well, which is fantastic. I mean, I was looking at some of the viewing figures, absolutely incredible.
Do you know what I was also thinking? I was thinking about nicknames, because Luke Littler's nickname is the Nuke. Luke Humphreys, the previous champion, was Cool Hand Luke. Gerwyn Price.
I like that.
I know, the Iceman. So I've come up with nicknames for both of you.
Oh, wow.
Oh, good. I thought you were going to ask us to come up with our own ones, but I'm glad. Well, hang on.
No.
We'll hear what it is first before I say I'm glad you came up with it.
Well, Ed, obviously I see you on Instagram and I see you on social media. You don't mind a bit of the gym. So I've gone for Ed the Muscle Russell. I mean, that's not bad.
Oh, hey. Oh, I'll take that.
That's not bad. Now, Todd and Harris, I was thinking, that's not the easiest name to rhyme with. But in the end, I thought, Todd, you are the glue that makes things happen. So surely you have got to be Todd, the plaster of Paris Harris.
Oh, wow.
Very good.
I have no idea where you're going with that when you start with the glue. I'm like, don't they turn horses into glue after a while? I'm just, yeah.
Yeah, I thought that
impressive.
I thought that
you
worked.
Definitely put some time into
I
that,
did.
Natalie. Well done.
That's not to say I haven't.
Wait, did you come up? Oh, no, I'm very happy with the muscle. Hey, I'm keeping the muscle. Did you come up with one for yourself, Nat?
Well, I'm going to steal the one that I had when in my tournament that I was in. I was Natalie the Destroyer Sawyer, which is quite cool.
And did you destroy in that tournament?
No. I did get to the semi-finals, but...
you got destroyed. Oh, okay,
yeah.
That's not too bad.
Yeah, but I thought...
I'm telling you, I am so impressed with Natalie, not just for her knowledge and her beauty and all that, but her honesty. She talked about how she failed her test, and then she talked... I mean, Natalie, well done. I respect the honesty.
Thank you. And by the way, on that question that you asked about how much did Luke Littler win, well, when you win the World Championship, you win £500,000. So bear in mind all the other tournaments, and that's the biggest prize in darts. So everything else that he's won leading up to that, It's a nice little 2024 that he's had, and no doubt he'll have a fantastic 2025 as well. But we talked about the football, we've talked about the darts. Boxing Day is always one of the key days over here, Todd, but Christmas Day, where it seems, is where it all happens in America.
From football to football, the USA, we embrace football during the holidays from Thanksgiving to New Year's. It is all about American football, whether it's the NBA or college football. This year in college football, they embraced a new playoff format. 12 teams made it in. The first round games were on campuses, so students, I guess, stuck around for a while to see their home team play, but the numbers were just massive. And you had traditional teams like Notre Dame in there, Penn State, Ohio State. Oregon was in there. Oregon had a terrible showing, but now they're down to the Final Four. And as of this recording, it is going to be very interesting to see how that plays out. You've got Ohio State and you've got Penn State and also Notre Dame and Georgia all making it in there. So we'll see who comes out as the national champion. But all bow down to the NFL, the Super League that is the NFL. The numbers continue to dominate. And I know you guys both tuned in to the Christmas Day and the Netflix showing, not for the game, but for the performance of Beyonce and her daughter, Blue Ivy. How about that?
To be honest, I'm not going to lie, I didn't watch it. So I had nothing to say, but I imagine it was fantastic.
It's Beyonce. End of story.
Well, exactly.
What I did want to say, though, because this is new to me, as Natalie said, we're used to the Boxing Day fixtures. We're used to Christmas Day itself being about family, being about the meal. Okay, what? So you're supposed to all stop and watch what would now be the King's Speech. But other than that, sport doesn't take center stage on Christmas Day. How does it work in an American household then? Are you having your Christmas lunch and then you got to pause to turn on the TV and watch the football?
Yeah, you know what's funny about the USA, and I'm old enough, quite a bit older than you guys, to realize when we were younger and they didn't have cable and streaming and things like that, it was just whatever was on the main three networks, NBC, CBS, and ABC. And usually there was one NFL game, and now the NBA has decided, hey, this NFL thing is pretty good. But the NFL never really kind of got on Christmas Day. They were more Thanksgiving, Christmas Eve, New Year's, that kind of thing. But now they've jumped into it, and the NBA put on, I think, 6 games on Christmas Day. NFL put one on just to see what happened. And, of course, their ratings were enormous. And just no one can contend with the NFL and their popularity. And then when you put on Beyonce with her daughter performing at halftime, which I heard they got just some incredible amount of money to perform. But anyways, I did watch it. I was very impressed with her daughter, Blue Ivy. It was fantastic. But the NBA also had some great games on as well. So Christmas Day, as a traditionalist, you wake up, presents, a nice lunch, spend the rest of the day putting together your kids' presents that they got, and watching a little football and basketball on the side. But man, it was a cornucopia of sports in the Americas with soccer, with football, with basketball. It was all going on. So you could find anything you wanted to, but man, great stuff all day long. You had the great basketball matchup between Golden State, Steph Curry, and Los Angeles Lakers and LeBron James. Lakers won it by 2 with a wild finish. But there was just a little bit of something for everyone in the Americas on Christmas Day.
Hey, so we talked about the US, we talked about Europe, and of course, a big thing in my part of the world, I guess, is the Boxing Day test and cricket that's obviously so popular around that time of the year. And down under, Australia reclaimed the Border Gavaskar Trophy for the first time in over a decade. They won 3-1. In a series that Australia captain Pat Cummins said very much lived up to the hype. So it was Australia-India. It kind of swung one way and then the other, with Australia winning their 3 tests pretty comfortably by 10 wickets, 184 runs, and 6 wickets, respectively. So many storylines. A star was born in Aussie teen sensation Sam Constas, who debuted with 60 off 65 balls. On the other end of the spectrum, I guess, Virat Kohli, who is a very experienced player, for so long, the bastion of Indian cricket, ended up with only 190 runs in the series. India captain Jasprit Bumrah collected the Player of the Series award, having taken 32 wickets. That equaled the record of most wickets taken by any bowler in an India versus Australia test series. Harbhajan Singh, the other one who got that, I think it was the 2000-2001 Australia tour of India. And that means for Australia that they qualify for the World Test Championship final at Lord's in June, where they will face South Africa. On the subject of Australia, can we talk about Nick Kyrgios very quickly?
Oh, yes.
I feel like Todd has thoughts in particular.
I love the
judging
guy.
by the look of his face.
You can't hate Nick Kyrgios except his behavior maybe on the court. But I'm telling you what, as soon as he puts the racket down, I don't know if you guys have caught any, they used him in the US for some commentary work. He does a really good job. He's kind of like, I don't know how to describe him, maybe a Shaquille O'Neal or Charles Barkley. He's just going to say what he thinks. And I think a lot of people find that so refreshing. Might not like his behavior on the court. You can't deny he's a great talent, but you put a microphone in front of him, pure gold.
And because he's still, I mean, there is concerns over the future because he's had to have wrist, surgery, and he's had a number of injury issues before, hasn't he? But because he's still fresh in the game, he talks with brilliant insight about the modern day game, which is wonderful. And there's nothing better than having a contemporary on the sort of commentary side of things, because there are a lot of people that are used, unfortunately, that the new fans of tennis might not actually know because they're of a certain generation that they wouldn't have seen play tennis. So I definitely agree with you, Todd. He will be an asset wherever he ends up, and he'll definitely end up in some sort of presenting commentary role. He's just fabulous.
Well, he did make his return to the tennis court, which I guess is first and foremost his priority. Well, I guess it is. I don't know if it is actually anymore, to be honest. But 18 months out through injury, he came back at the Brisbane International. He played singles. And of course, I think we spoke about it on a previous episode, partnered world number one Novak Djokovic former world number one, Novak Djokovic in the doubles. His comeback, though, was cut a little bit short. He suffered a grade 1 abdominal strain, and it meant that he withdrew from an exhibition match that he was supposed to play with Djokovic in Melbourne. He said he is still hopeful of making it to the Australian Open, which would be his first major since the 2022 US Open. And we'll look ahead to the Australian Open a little bit later on in the episode, because that's, of course, one of the big tournaments that's going to be kicking off this 2025 sporting year. And finally, one of the big stories in this part of the world this month was Vietnam's victory in the ASEAN Championship, or the Mitsubishi Cup as it's known. Now, it was their third title. They beat two-time defending champions Thailand 5-3 on aggregate in a two-legged final. That's kind of a relic of the past, isn't it? Two-legged finals. Vietnam also achieved a perfect streak of 7 wins in a single ASEAN Cup campaign. It was an accomplishment unmatched in the tournament's 29-year history. Now, the MVP and the top scorer was Vietnam's Rafaelson, the ye olde Vietnamese name Rafaelson. He became a dual citizen, in fact, of Vietnam and Brazil in September last year. But the celebrations were absolutely epic. People flooded the streets, flags, horns, cars just parked wherever they could stop. Street storming is what it's called, in fact. And I've been lucky enough to have been in Vietnam for a number of these tournaments. It's hard to express just how passionate the entire country is about their football team. But don't take it from me. Let's take it from a man who knows exactly what those celebrations were like and just how Vietnam won the trophy. I spoke to local Vietnamese journalist Ju. Ju, thanks so much for joining us here on This Sporting Planet. First of all, just give us an idea of what football means to the people of Vietnam. Is it a sport that really captures the public imagination?
Football is not just a sport, but also an integral part of the cultural and spiritual life of Vietnamese people. For a long time, football has been a symbol of uniting national pride and an endless source of inspiration for generations. Across the country, from urban cities to rural villages, the sight of football matches, whether in grand stadiums or on open fields, it ignites a burning passion. And when the Vietnamese national team plays, the whole nation seems to share the heartbeat. Moreover, football sparks imagination and dream among the youth. Many children play football with hope that one day they too can wear the national jersey.
Yeah, I mean, I've been there in Hanoi, actually, I think it was, for one of the AFF Cups, the Suzuki Cup it was called back then. And you're right, there's this walking street that, well, nobody could walk on it because it was just full of people sitting down and watching the football on the big screens and then very much celebrating, storming the streets afterwards. Now, the final was played over 2 legs, both of which Vietnam won. But that second leg in particular seemed like such a thrilling match. Can you just take us through what happened on the pitch in the final?
What can I say? In the first leg, Tung Song's praise helped Vietnam secure a narrow victory. And as for the second leg, I can say that it was like a roller coaster ride, taking views from one surprise to another. In my opinion, the highlight of the match was the moment when Subatok, the striker of Thailand, scored a controversial goal to make it 2-1. Many consider it as an act of an unfair play. However, this moment seemed to fuel Vietnam's determination even further. First of all, before the match, a Vietnamese player during an interview, and he's very confident he started. We are not afraid of Thailand. And on the pitch, they prove it. They overcome psychological pressure, and the intense atmosphere is created by over 50,000 fans at the Rosamanga Stadium. Yeah, the one of the most scariest stadium in over the world. So, yeah, I can say so. And so, in Vietnam scored two late goals to secure a thrilling 3-2 victory. And after Vietnam conceded the second goal, the players, they work hard to avoid collapsing under pressure. They stay composed, maintain this playing style, and capitalize on every opportunity to turn the game around.
Yeah, I mean, there were so many great performances all over the park, but the MVP of the tournament was Rafaelson, or Nguyen Xuan Son, I guess we should call him, in Vietnam, because he only gained his citizenship a few months ago, then made his debut in the final group stage game, eventually finishing the tournament as top scorer with 7 goals. How important was he to the Vietnam cause?
About Sung Song, yes. He has a combination of strength in winning ball and holding the ball, the ability to lay the ball off and bring other players into the game, as well as high quality at scoring at different kinds of goals. I'm sure that defender in Southeast Asia will find him too hard to handle. It will be interesting to see how he fares against best defender from all part of Asia. Um, about Sung Song, maybe his contributions goes beyond technical skill. His presence brought a fresh dynamic to the team, both tactically and mentally. He is the type of player who capitalizes on opportunities and consistently make a difference in crucial moments, particularly, in the final, especially in the first leg of the final match. This demonstrates that Rafaelson is in an integral part of Vietnam's journeys.
Now, I've seen lots of videos and photos of the celebrations in Vietnam, and in particular, the street storming that took place. Firstly, just tell us exactly what is street storming, and secondly, just how wild were those celebrations after the final?
This is a very interesting question. About street storming. This is a popular term in Vietnam. It's used to describe the celebratory sense where people take to the streets after a major sport event, especially when the national team secure a victory. People usually drive motorbikes carrying red flag with yellow star, blowing horns and chanting slogans to create an incredibly lively and vibrant atmosphere across the street. After the final match of the ASEAN Cup, the celebration in Vietnam truly erupted. Thousands of people, they flocked to the street to share the joy of victory.
Well, we look forward to seeing where this Vietnamese football team can go from here. Ju, thanks so much for joining us. Yeah, incredible stuff there. As I mentioned, I think, to both of you, I've been in Vietnam when they have won massive football tournaments like that, and Ju's absolutely correct. Street storming is a ridiculous phenomenon. Don't think of getting anywhere in the city that night because you are going to be stuck behind people with bikes and flags and horns. I mean, what about you two? Do you experience that kind of thing in your part of the world?
Well, I will just say, I think that's the essence of this sporting planet. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, whether it's in Hanoi or New York City, Los Angeles, London, Munich. It's fans that love sport. And we also love sport. It brings the world together, and it kind of shrinks the distance between us all because we can all relate to what they were going through. And storming the streets of Hanoi, I mean, the joy they felt and just the video of that. And Edward, you've been there. You've experienced before. Yeah, if you're going somewhere in a hurry, it's not happening. And I think with Kansas City Chiefs win the Super Bowl, the streets shut down. It's almost a national holiday in that state. So I think it was pretty cool. And how great is that? How often are you going to talk about football in Vietnam? But to those people, biggest day of the year.
I think street storming, I love the term street storming. I've never heard of that before. But I mean, you see it over here. Obviously, we have celebrations when clubs, I'm talking about football clubs in particular, will win titles. So you see the bus top parade. But if I go back to when Brentford won promotion, finally through the playoffs, having never won a playoff before, all around where I live, it was lit up. The buzz was incredible. There were thousands of people on the streets stopping the traffic. There were people on the bridges, like Kew Bridge, if you know where in London, in West London, Kew Bridge that connects the north and the south of London. Flares were being lit all over that bridge. It was an incredible night of celebration, and thousands turned up at the stadium knowing that the players were going to turn up there for their sort of party afterwards. So yeah, and who can forget when we had Gary Al Smith on a few podcasts ago, where he joined us to talk about the Africa Cup of Nations and how Ivory Coast won, and he basically hadn't gotten over the celebrations for the way he was talking. So yeah, you can tell that they had some street storming in the Ivory Coast as well.
Absolutely. Hey, we've got to get a move on because we've got so much to cover on this show. And we've mentioned it briefly already. It is not long now, just a couple of days, in fact, depending upon when you're listening to this podcast, until the start of the Australian Open, the first tennis Grand Slam of the year. It starts on Sunday, the 12th of January, and the finals will be played on Saturday, the 25th, and Sunday, the 26th of Jan. Over 900,000 people expected to head to Melbourne Park across the fortnight. And to find out a little bit more about the tournament, Jack Winstanley's been catching up with Australian Open radio commentator Peter Mercato.
What's the latest on Nick Kyrgios' involvement? Because I've been reading that he's making his comeback, then there's fears he might pull out because of injury. Are we still on course for that comeback through wildcard?
Yeah, well, certainly Craig Tiley's making all the right noises. I think this is very much, if there's any sort of injury niggle or anything like that, it's going to be safety first with Nick, considering the dramas that he's had getting back out onto the court. And getting the match fitness. So he's been out in the practice court for a while, and he's been hitting and he's been getting his body right and everything like that, but it doesn't substitute for being on the match court. So he played those matches in Brisbane and got through them okay. This is on the minor scale from what I understand in terms of the ab strain that he's got. Well, certainly that's what the tournament director says. And he didn't participate. There was an exhibition event with Novak Djokovic that he was down to be a part of, but decided not to play. He's just going to rehab himself. He's very much in the draw, and he will then see how it goes. He did say himself that the rigours of 5-set tennis might be a bit of a challenge, just first up in terms of coming back and his ability to sustain it. He's got a British player, Jacob Fernley, first up in the opening round, and that will be a challenge. But the thing that he will have if he does step out onto court is he'll probably be playing out on John Cain Arena, which is his favourite stadium in the whole planet, really. The atmosphere out there is going to be enormous, as plenty of players have found out that the crowd's going to be overwhelmingly on the side of Kyrgios. He should get to the start line and soak in the atmosphere. Fingers crossed, at the moment he's still in the draw, so hopefully he gets out there and plays. I think there'd be more at this stage likely than unlikely, but we're recording this, and the time it goes out, it might completely change.
Andy Murray is popular at the Australian Open. Novak Djokovic is popular at the Australian Open. This must be a dream team-up for the fans at the Australian Open, with Murray coming on board as Djokovic's coach. I just want to get your thoughts on that. Like, what do you make of it? What do you think they can bring to each other and complement each other as Djokovic goes for yet another Australian Open crown?
Yeah, what is it? The 24 majors that Novak has won, and you want someone in your corner that has some semblance of experience of winning Grand Slams. If you can't get Federer, if you can't get Nadal, maybe Murray is your next best option there. And they've spoken about the fact that there was a long phone call and a long conversation, and Andy's quite openly said, well, this has come out of the blue. I wasn't looking for it. I wasn't expecting it. I wasn't anything like that. Novak called me, and obviously he had to run it past his wife, of course, to get permission to go back out on the road. But what are those 1%ers in the Djokovic game that someone who has been there right at the very top of the men's game would understand, as opposed to any other potential coach? Obviously, they know each other really well. They know that it whether it will work or not longer term remains to be seen. I mean, the question you always ask yourself is, he's won so many majors. What else does he have to learn? What else does he need to know? And it's kind of like, well, you know what? Every year, Novak Djokovic has pushed the sport forward. Every year, he has kept himself, really, up until recently, at the top of the men's game. And how has he done that? He hasn't done that by sitting back going, I know everything about tennis and I know how to play, so I'm not going to worry about practicing so much, or I'll wind down or things like that. He practices hard. he gets the younger players in so he can really assess their games. Federer did that as well. So he's keeping an eye on all these ones coming up. Tactically, having another voice in there, a different voice, a voice of experience, I think it is fantastic for him. And obviously, Andy, we know how analytical he is on court. We know how meticulous his preparation was for matches. They, of course, know each other really well. So that's why this partnership, I think, will work. It's not an unknown quantity. Novak knows what he's getting. Andy knows what he can give. And the way that those two will marry up and work together, I think, even if it's not 52 weeks of the year, even if it's just shorter stretches, even if it is just short term, anything that Novak can get to get him to that major title record, why not take the opportunity when it's there? So I'm going to be excited to see how this plays out.
Two of the players that will be standing in his way, you can't really talk about the men's side of the draw without mentioning even Yannick Sinner and Carlos Alcaraz. When you look at the draw, Alcaraz is on the same side of the draw as Djokovic, Sinner on the other half. What do you make of Sinner and Alcaraz coming into this? Because, I mean, to me, it feels like there's a bit of a changing of the guard that's been going on for a couple of years now in men's tennis, and those two really are leading that.
Absolutely. And then I think one of the things with the men's game, it was Novak Djokovic and then daylight for many years. When you come down to Australia, go, who's going to win? Because the question you always get asked is, who's going to win the tournament? And I'm like, I've been asked in December. I don't know yet. That changing of the guard is happening. But it's a group of players. So as we've seen on the women's side, it was a group of players for many, many years. You could have had 15, 20 live chances for winning the title going into the tournament. We're starting to see that here. And yes, it is the younger brigade, you're right, in terms of Sinner and Alcaraz who are leading that charge. But, a guy like Sasha Zverev, who is desperately trying to win that title, trying to get over the line at the majors, he's been so close. He's one of those that are we spending a lot of time talking about him? No, but the form's been good. Played some great matches at United Cup. He always is such a meticulous preparer at this time of the year. He, for many years, has been coming down to Australia early, climatising, getting used to the conditions, played the United Cup. He had those two matches and then withdrew from his third one. He says he's fine and ready to go. He knows his body as well. So the point on the men's side is that you now have what we had on the women's, where you could go, right, there's about 6 or 7 players who you could put right up there and build that strong case to say they are going to win the tournament. On the women's side, does it appear a bit more clear-cut with Arina Sabalenka? Maybe. Iga Swiatek hasn't had the greatest of records here at Melbourne Park. Is it time to maybe switch that around a little bit? Is it that race in two? And this is starting to tighten things up a little bit. Possibly. But then we've seen at Wimbledon with the likes of Donna Vekic making a big run now as the 18th seed, so gets a bit of seeding protection coming through. Again, there could be those upsets. It seems less clear cut in terms of that, but then you got someone like Yelena Ostapenko, who comes in as the 16th seed, who could have a real terrible run in the opening round and go out easily or win the tournament. Like the oscillations backwards and forwards, and that's what makes it so much fun. Yeah, there might be that player to make that run. We've seen that at Australian Opens gone by, but I think at the moment, just on the women's side, it does appear to be around those 2, maybe 3, 4 players. Bit more open, I think, on the men's side, but we'll play this in 2 weeks' time, and I'll be completely wrong.
Yeah, great to hear from Peter there, and thanks to Jack for the interview as well. So the latest, when we are recording this at least, is that Nick Kyrgios seems more likely than not to appear at the Australian Open, or at least that's what Craig Tiley, the big boss at the AO, seems to think. Nick using that protected ranking. He has his sights set on, causing a bit of a stir at the AO because it was the first time since he had to withdraw from his first round match in 2023, just hours before it got underway. Just a bit of background on John Cain Arena, which was previously called Hisense Arena in Melbourne Arena. I can't really keep up, to be honest. Every time I go to Melbourne Park, it's called something different naming rights, different sponsor. But basically, that is called the People's Court because the two main show courts at Melbourne Park, you have Rod Laver Arena and you have Margaret Court Arena. They are ticketed courts, so you need to get tickets, as you would at Wimbledon, for example, specifically for those courts. Anyone who has a ground pass, anyone who can even just get into Melbourne Park, has a chance of getting a seat at John Cain Arena, which is something that you have to queue up for at the start of the day, but you don't need a specific ticket to get in there. As long as you're in the park, you'll be able to bid or queue for a spot to watch it. So we have had many occasions over the years at the Australian Open where Nick Kyrgios has requested, although his billing would suggest he should be on one of the first two show courts, to actually play in the People's Court because it's a lot louder. He's going to have a lot more support behind him because these are going to be Australian fans queuing up, not just the tennis elite who are watching the nice proper matches on the two show courts. But yeah, it's going to be great, hopefully, to have him back there because it is the Happy Slam. And as I'm sure you both know, Australians really get behind their own sporting heroes.
Oh, yes. We've seen that across the globe, haven't we? They're so familiar in that sort of gold and green that they wear. Interesting with the Nick Kyrgios situation. Obviously, he's taking on the rising British star that it's Jacob Fernley. His story is fascinating because I think if you go to over a year ago, he was ranked something like 1,890 something. He's now in the top 100. His rise has been absolutely rapid. This is his first Australian Open for Jacob Fernley as well. He'll come into it with I'm sure, a little bit of a confidence because it's his first Australian Open. Yes, it's huge that he's taking on an Australian in front of that partisan crowd. But I just think his story in itself is fascinating. I think he went to school with Jack Draper, the British number one as well, was out in university in America not that long ago. So, from going from a university student to suddenly now a professional player, it's a fantastic story and one that we should learn more about, I suppose.
Yeah, interesting what Peter was saying in the interview as well about it being such an open draw and it's so hard to predict, especially because it is the first slam of the year. And I think more so than in previous iterations, there aren't those standout players. Of course, there is Sinner and Sabalenka, but Todd, from an American point of view, I'm going to go for Coco Gauff, I think. I'm going to put it out there and I'm going to say she's going to win it because she heads to Melbourne in scintillating form. She clinched both singles and mixed doubles titles at the United Cup with Team USA. I think she won all 6 of her matches without dropping a set. Although I actually put down on the paper before the draw came out, Coco Gauff, and now I'm looking at the draw, and she could face Kenin Osaka Pegula just on the way to the quarters before then, setting up a semi-final with Sabalenka. So yeah, maybe a little a little bit tougher now than it looked 24 hours or so ago.
Let's talk about the NFL playoffs. We've talked about the NFL. It is an absolute super league. They dominate the landscape. As you look at the ratings in the U.S. markets, at least, of the top 100 shows in 2024, I think 80 of them were NFL broadcasts. So they really do dominate. Now they get to the really money makers here for the networks that have put money in to buy rights, and that is the first round of the playoffs. Okay, so you have the 2 seeds from the AFC and the NFC, they get buys. And that's the Kansas City Chiefs, your defending Super Bowl champions. And of course, the feel-good story, the Detroit Lions have never won a Super Bowl. Is this their year? But the wild card round, this is where everyone gets excited because you get double headers on Saturday and Sunday. So if you like football, it is football palooza as we go to this playoff round. Houston Texans taking on the Los Angeles Chargers. Baltimore Ravens, which a lot of people think this is their year to win it all, taking on the Steelers. Buffalo Bills and the Denver Broncos. And then the NFC, you've got the Philadelphia Eagles, Green Bay Packers, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the Washington Commanders with possibly the league MVP in their quarterback. And then the Los Angeles Rams against my Minnesota Vikings. How does Minnesota win 14 games and they have to travel to Los Angeles, away game in the first round? That's what happens when you lose to Detroit in the last game of the season. But it's just crazy how the NFL landscape now has been expanded. We talked about tennis having a long season. I'm telling you right now, the NFL, I think they need to give each of these teams a bye and give them some more rest because it is just a daunting. We're talking they've been playing since August, and this is going to go into February before we get to the Super Bowl. And of course, the Super Bowl gets started, and then, wow, it's craziness. So anyways, that's what I'm looking forward to, obviously. And then they talk about who's going to win the MVP. Lamar Jackson for Baltimore is definitely in the running, but I think Josh Allen from Buffalo, I think he's going to be the guy. I think this has just been his year, and he's done so much. And depending on what Buffalo does in the playoffs, I think it'll really determine who gets the MVP. Now, the other event I wanted to mention is the start of a brand new golf league. It's called TGL, or Tomorrow's Golf League, brought up by Rory McIlroy and Tiger Woods. And we'll see the top players from the PGA Tour compete as part of city teams in 2-hour weekly competitions. ESPN in the States has the rights, and they're going to hold it on a Tuesday night, which is one of those days where there's not a whole lot else going on. You're not competing with the NFL or the NBA. It's a Tuesday night thing. The twist, it's being held in the SoFi Center, a first of its kind venue in Palm Beach Gardens in Florida, about 45 minutes from Tiger Woods' house. Pretty convenient, but it's a crazy thing. I watched the first go around, and just to see them hit into this massive, huge simulator, and they can put up any kind of course anywhere around the world with kind of crazy sounding names. It's pretty cool, and I think it's really going to catch on. But they do, once they hit into the simulator to the big screen, they do have to play onto a surface, which is about the size of, I'll say, 4 basketball courts. But I don't know. The future, it will all play out. The competition started early this week, as I said, and I've been chatting to someone who's actually there. And we're now joined on this Sporting Planet by Claire Rogers of the Rogers Report on golf.com. Claire, welcome to this Sporting Planet. First of all, how was your experience in Florida at SoFi Center?
Thank you so much for having me. It was really fun and really different. I have spent a lot, like the last 4 years, traveling and going to golf tournaments, being around professional golfers. This was very different in that I think it was entertainment first, which was so exciting for someone like me who wants to get to know the players a little bit, see something different. It was really fun. I had a great time. And I think, I have some friends who aren't going to sit and watch golf for 4 hours on a Sunday afternoon. So this felt like something else that they could tune into, but still kind of get to know golf a little bit.
Let's start from the ground up. Obviously, this was started by Tiger Woods and Rory McIlroy. Let's just talk about the venue, because that's usually what carries golf first. It's the spectacular venues, whether it's Pebble Beach or TPC or Augusta, whatever. What was SoFi Center like? How did it feel being inside there?
It's really cool. You walk in and it's kind of like if you go to, an NBA game, you walk in and you're kind of behind the scenes a little bit, and then you have to go into your seat, and then suddenly you're just in this massive indoor golf facility. The screen itself is 5 stories high. It's just massive, and you don't even realize it until you walk all the way up to it, and you're like, oh wow, like 12 of me could fit here. It's so much bigger than you think of your regular simulator golf that maybe people are playing here in the winter.
So it's like an IMAX version of a simulator golf screen.
It is massive. Yeah. And then once, things get started, it fits 1,500 people. There's boxes up top and then regular seating down below, and they have lights. It's music. The green itself rotates. It's just, there's so much going on. It's a very exciting experience. I was doing an interview and someone had like a little kid with them, and I was thinking, what a crazy sensory experience for that kid, because there's just so much to look at and hear and take in.
Let me ask you this. Do you think the point of this for Tiger and Rory is build the game of golf, bring new fans into golf, or a combination of both, or is it gimmicky? I mean, what do you think they're trying to accomplish here?
So I think that's a really good question, because for a while, I'm not really like a big YouTube watcher ever. Growing up, my brothers would be watching YouTube videos and it never really clicked for me. And then over the last few years, golf on YouTube has grown to be the biggest thing. You'll see Grant Horvath just did a video with Tiger Woods, the Barstool Boys, good. Like it is just exploding, and it's such a different group of people that it's targeting. It's no longer, I think of the way I grew up playing golf, and I was constantly surrounded by 55, 60-year-old men. It was very buttoned up, and your shirt had to be tucked in, and, take your hat off when you walk inside. But if we want to keep growing the game in new ways, I think this is perfect for it, because it is more packaged for the golf fan who likes the YouTube style stuff, where it's quick moving. It's more young, it's more energetic. There's a lot going on. So I think it is an interesting and a positive way to kind of grow the game. But I think when I say that, I need to say like in a new way, not kind of focusing on what you think.
Not replacing the traditional way.
Exactly. Not replacing it. I think it complements it.
Yeah. I think it's a genius philosophy, the 2 hours. I think ESPN's genius putting on a Tuesday night. I mean, obviously, weather, time of day does not matter. You got a chance to be up close and personal with the teams. I mean, Shane Lowry and Tiger Woods, they're all there. They look like they were having a blast. I mean, it looks like they were out the night with the fellas at Top Golf and just having fun. And the trash talking, whoever came up with miking these guys up, genius.
Oh, it was great. It was so much fun. And I couldn't help kind of but think of how many of like, so, I'm at that age where a lot of people are getting married and people are doing bachelor parties and bachelorette parties. And I kept thinking this would be the perfect place for a group of young guys to go hang out for a couple hours, watch the golf, have stuff up on TV. It was really fun. And I think they had I know they had a blast. I talked to them right after. And I think, when you're playing at a golf tournament, even when I'm there, it's a little more serious, right? Like they are there to win and they have their job to do and they whatever. So you're there. You don't get as much talking in between shots. You don't get as much fan interaction. Like Xander was kind of talking back to the fans a little bit, joking with them. That would probably never happen at a PGA Tour event. But this was a really fun environment where they were allowed to show off their personalities. My sister is not a super big golf fan, and she texted me and was like, Shane Lowry seems funny. And I was like, yes, he is. And now you get to know that. So
Tiger Woods, he will be playing next week. I know that's going to be exciting for everyone. That's going to probably be a massive rating number for ESPN. What do you think is going to be Tiger's, I don't say his strength, but do you think he's going to go out this? He's such a competitive guy. He's going to go out this full tilt. He's not going to want to lose anything to anyone.
Oh, yeah. I think it's going to be really fun. I was just at the PNC watching him play with his son, Charlie, and it was fun. I mean, they were, right in it. They went into a playoff, and that competitive nature never leaves him. And I think it stays with him no matter what he does. So I am so excited to see, I think some of the best Tiger moments we've seen are him, having fun with Justin Thomas on the range, making, giving somebody some like trouble or something, making a joke on the tee box. Just his interactions with players, I think, is what people kind of go crazy for. So I think that is going to be the highlight of next week, if I had to guess.
Before we let you go, plug your site where people can get more content from you and your coverage of TGL.
Yes, I write the Rogers Report every week on golf.com. I do called a Scoop interview there where I eat ice cream with people in the golf world. So most of my recaps of all TGL stuff will be over on golf.com.
She is Claire Rogers of golf.com. Claire, thanks for joining us on This Sporting Planet.
Thanks for having me, Todd.
All right, so what do you guys think? Who doesn't want more golf? Who doesn't want a new league? And you have Tiger and Rory involved in it. How can this thing fail? Do you guys think this is a winner? Nat, I'll start with you.
I mean, I love it. I think it's a kind of new league that might sort of draw the attention of a younger viewer who might not want to sit through. I mean, is it a 4-hour round that they're playing? I mean, how long is a round, I suppose? 2 hours.
2 hours.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. So for a new generation of fan who might not enjoy sitting in front of the telly all day, although who doesn't? Maybe it's a good way to attract them into this sport. But I also love the fact, don't they have things like a hammer, which teams can use to sort of double the value of a hole, for example, and things like that.
You throw a flag and it's dropping the hammer.
Right, there you go. And then they've got a shot clock, so they've only got so long to take a shot. So I love all these things because obviously golf can be a long game to watch, like I said. And we have seen a number of those players as well take a long time to take a shot. So anything that sort of slows it down, speeds it up, I should say, I think is only a bonus.
Yeah, why not, right? Why not try something different? We've got so many traditional golf tournaments going on. Why not mix things up and see if this different approach helps to bring a new audience to the sport? I mean, here in Singapore, we don't have a lot of land. So there are only a couple of golf courses in the entire country. And we're quite used to this whole golf simulator thing. So it's not something new in that respect, watching people hit a ball into a screen. But I guess in a way also it's something that is easier for people to emulate because not everyone has access to golf courses, especially in this part of the world. So seeing the top pros use the simulator, you might get into the simulator yourself trying to replicate that.
I think it's really one of those aspects that brings the intimacy for the fans. I mean, if you can go into an arena like the SoFi Center and be that close, and the other great thing about it is they have all the players mic'd up. So you can hear the trash talk when they throw the hammer, when they do challenges. I think if you get the right players in there, the combinations, it's going to be pretty good. I mean, putting someone like Ricky Fowler in there and Shane Lowry, you get them talking and you get to hear what they say. That is gold. And I think anything that brings the fans closer to them, it's not quite as raucous as the Phoenix Open, the Waste Management, where the fans are just an absolute
Yeah.
bachelor party going on out there. But it's close, and the fans are cheering, and in the backstroke, they're yelling stuff out. So we shall see if the TGL takes off. But I'm telling you, my first offering, I'm a fan.
Yeah, I think it's something that we got to look out for, that it's going to be something that maybe we'll all be looking forward to on this weekly basis. Did you say it's going to be, Todd?
Yeah, every week, every Tuesday night, tune in.
Wow. Okay. Well, speaking of golf, alongside the start of this new indoor tournament, it's worth mentioning that the first Rolex Series event of the year, which is part of the DP World Tour, gets underway on the 16th of January. That's with the Dubai Desert Classic, and Rory McIlroy will be looking to win it for a third consecutive time. Fifth time overall as well. And, there's just the small matter of $9 million on the line for the winner as well. So why wouldn't you want to compete in this one? It's a field that's littered with big names, as you can well imagine. Victor Hovland, Tommy Fleetwood, John Rahm, Patrick Reed, they're all getting involved in this one. And we all know that Rory McIlroy, he'll want to get over some of the heartbreak of last year when it comes to, say, the US Open, leading as he was, going into the final round, and then capitulated, didn't he, in the final few holes to pave the way for Bryson DeChambeau to win that one. But he'll be looking to start 2025 off in spectacular style. But January over here, Todd and Ed, obviously is massive when it comes to football, when it comes to the transfer window. And it's now open. From January the 1st, it has now opened here in Europe for teams to do their transfer business. It will close in the Premier League on Monday, the 3rd of February. And all eyes will be particularly on certain clubs with whether or not there'll be outgoings, obviously incomings, but even players signing contracts. And I'm talking in particular with Liverpool leading the way as they are, but 3 of their best players are out of contract this summer. It does make you wonder how on earth they've got to this stage that these 3 top players are out of contract this summer. But we're talking Trent Alexander-Arnold, we're talking Mo Salah and Virgil van Dijk as well. There are links with Real Madrid for Trent Alexander-Arnold. Reports suggest that Liverpool have turned down Turned down I don't want to say an offer, but it was an approach from Real Madrid for their defender. But like I say, how can you end up with 3 of your best players in a position where right now they can be talking to other European sides, Ed?
It is weird, isn't it? I mean, to be honest, I'm an Arsenal fan, and we've had this happen so many times to our Arsenal players that it doesn't surprise me. All I can think is that perhaps we as members of the public don't really fully know what's going on, and perhaps Liverpool have offered contracts to these players, where Mo Salah seems to continuously take the opportunity to show that they haven't had any. I think he posted something on Instagram with the 3 of them, didn't he? It was Salah, Van Dijk, and Trent all kind of standing around the ball ahead of a free kick. I don't know. I don't know how it gets to this point, because those 3 players, I mean, Salah in particular, has really led this charge for Liverpool to get to the top of the table. Without his goals, they wouldn't be anywhere near. And these are 3 players, particularly I think in Van Dijk and Salah. Trent had a pretty awful game, didn't he, after all that speculation came out, that are going to be so impossible to replace, spending hundreds of $millions on someone who's not even going to get close to their quality. So you might as well use that money on renewing their contracts.
I think it'll be interesting seeing what also happens with Marcus Rashford. I think that's going to be a big story. I mean, his price tag is so big. Who can step up and take it? Does he go on a loan? I think Chelsea possibly going after Mano is another big story. So I guess I'm trying to understand the transfer window. It's so long. I mean, there's like a trade deadline in the NBA, the NFL has that, but your transfer window of the Premier League seems kind of wide. And so I don't know if you guys love the suffering or just love the drama that it brings around, but it's a whole month of wondering if your stars are going to just buy.
Well, in our next episode, we've got a transfer window special for you. We're going to be joined by European football expert Kevin Hatchard to find out exactly how a transfer deal is done and reflect on some of the most successful and unsuccessful transfers of years gone by.
Okay, before we finish, it's time for A.O.B. Any other business?
Yes, and we discussed the Mitsubishi Cup earlier on. There was another football tournament that took place in the last few weeks. That was the Arabian Gulf Cup. Bahrain won the trophy by beating Oman 2-1 in the final for their second title. On the subject of football, Netherlands and Barcelona great Patrick Kluivert has been named Indonesia coach. He'll be tasked with taking the country to their first World Cup since independence. Now, he does inherit a side that mostly features players born in the Netherlands and then naturalized to play for Indonesia. So it does kind of make sense from that point of view. He can speak Dutch to those players, obviously. And he'd been widely linked with the role after Indonesia controversially sacked the South Korean Shin Tae-yong, who took them into the decisive third round of Asian qualifying for the World Cup. Look, he's had a stellar playing career. It can't really be said that he's had a stellar managerial career so far. His last role was in charge of Adana Demirspor in Turkey. No disrespect to them, but not a high-flying position that he had coming into this one. So we'll wait and see what he can do. Formerly, he was the caretaker manager of Curaçao back in 2021 as well. And finally, China's most successful side, Guangzhou FC, will not be playing professionally next season because of their failure to pay off enough of their substantial debt. Now, these are 8-time Chinese Super League champions, but they have been refused permission by the Chinese Football Association to play in professional domestic football when the new campaign begins, and it brings to an end an era of lavish spending that propelled them to 2 AFC Champions League titles in 2013 and 2015. During that time, they were 4th at the Club World Cup. They had an academy partnership with Real Madrid, and they had plans for a 100,000 capacity stadium. It hasn't quite all panned out that way for them, but we'll wait to see whether they can make it back into Chinese professional football next season.
All right. Well, over here, remember the name Graham Potter? Well, he's back in management after his last spell in the Premier League lasted just 7 months when he was at Chelsea. He is now the new West Ham head coach, replacing Julen Lopetegui following the Spaniard's short time in charge of the club. He signs a 2.5-year deal. He takes over with the Hammers in 14th, not a great place for them in the Premier League, 7 points above the relegation zone and just 6 league wins to their name. You've seen a lot of managers this season talk about a certain playing style. Ange Postecoglou, Ruben Amorim, Russell Martin when he was at Southampton as well. Well, one of Potter's strengths is his versatility. He does like to play a fluid type of football. He will change his style in games as well. So that could be a big plus for West Ham as well. But it is a big job for him. It's a big job for him to prove himself, because after working at Brighton and doing so well at Brighton, he was working under that fabulous structure of Tony Bloom and Dan Ashworth, that recruitment structure that they have. Moved to a Chelsea side that was stumbling, albeit that it was the new first-time manager for Todd Boehly since he took over. That was a bit of a mess for him. I think he'll want to prove himself that was a blip, and he very much is a strong manager who, of course, was linked with the England national job as well. But he did say that club management was where he wanted to be currently. So he's the new West Ham manager.
Yeah, we'll wait to see what he can do for the Hammers. That is it for Any Other Business. That is it for this episode as well. So make sure to subscribe to the show via your favorite podcast provider so you never miss an episode.
Next up, as I mentioned, we've got a special episode talking about the January transfer window. We'll be finding out exactly what happens during this month, what it takes to make a deal happen. I'll be sharing some of my experiences of hosting coverage of Transfer Deadline Day as it's become known here in the UK.
And that's going to be a fascinating listen, and will be in your feeds on Monday, the 20th of January. Until then, for Ed, Natalie, and myself, and the whole of this sporting planet, thanks for listening.